All over the news, you hear about the war in Ukraine. You hear about the threat of a nuclear attack from Russia. This is the reality of warfare today. However, it was not always that way. In today's world, militaries use weapons and strategies that have been shaped into what they are by other conflicts throughout history. The way wars and battles have been fought has changed drastically in the past 100 years. By better informing you about the history of warfare, you can better understand the significance of today's advancements in military. First, I'm going to give you some general information on warfare as a whole. Second, I'm going to inform you on the most impactful wars of the 20th century, World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. Finally, I'll wrap everything together with a conclusion. Warfare. Defined by the World History Encyclopedia, warfare is generally understood to be the controlled and systematic waging of armed conflict between sovereign nations or states, using military might and strategy, until one opponent is defeated on the field or sues for peace in the face of inevitable destruction and greater loss of human life. World War I, World War II, and Vietnam War. The Great War, also known as World War I, is still one of the most significant wars in our entire history, forcing over 30 countries into a conflict that the world has never seen before. Trench warfare was the main tactical standpoint of World War I. Armies fought for months, even years, in trenches filled with disease. Along with decaying corpses, rats, muck and water, and little food, it made for some of the worst fighting conditions. Another large factor of World War I was the use of chemical warfare and biological weapons. Mustard gas was highly used as a chemical weapon, causing death along with devastating injuries to soldiers fighting on the battles. However, civilians were not safe either, as the National Library of Public Medication reports that anthrax and ganthers were two devastating health hazards affected the public in World War I. However, in a certain sense, things were beginning to look up for some soldiers. Newly developed weapons began to emerge in the midst of destruction. Tanks and fighter planes saw their first use in World War I, giving better survival rates for those controlling them. Unfortunately, though, not long after the events of World War I, Germany wanted revenge the way that other countries had punished them after the Great War, sparking the bloodiest war in history into a raging flame. World War II was by far the most significant war in our entire history, forcing nations to throw all the resources, people, and industry they had into conflict. As described in the Cambridge History of Warfare, the conflict that ended in 1945 is often described as total war, unprecedented in both scale and character. Young boys were forced to fight for Hitler and the Nazis. Americans had to ration food, fuel, rubber, lumber, and countless other items. World War II saw a drastic change in almost all aspects of combat. Fighter planes had become more agile and capable of air combat. Tanks were now extremely functional and were capable of going nearly anywhere. Other aircraft, such as bomber planes, carried out airstrikes that severely weakened production and industry. One of the largest changes in combat that World War II saw was the vast, widespread area. Germany and America each fought on at least 3 different battlefronts. Europe, Africa, and the Netherlands were all areas that the US and Germany spread their resources across during the war, not to mention the Pacific Theater, which is another front that America had to fight on. Now that I've informed you on the 2 biggest wars of the 20th century, we're going to shift gears and talk about war involving 2 superpowers of the later 20th century, the United States and the Soviet Union, both fighting for control of countries like Vietnam. The Vietnam War was hated by a large majority of Americans during its campaign. It was an effort by the United States to stop the Soviet Union from spreading their communism into other countries. Newly developed weapons such as the M16 rifle and developed aircraft such as the F-100 were advancements in military technology. One of the most useful and valued developments utilized during the Vietnam War was the helicopter. According to the World History Network, helicopter gunships bombarded enemy positions with shells and rockets both to confuse the enemy to the actual landing site and to suppress enemy troops nearby. World War I paved the road, which led to new weapons and tactics. World War II saw the first of developed machines, weapons, and tactics. The Vietnam War began to further develop and advance these aspects of warfare along with its components. In this speech, my goal is to inform you about World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War. I believe I've done that. These wars claimed the lives of perhaps over 130 million souls, along with shaping the world and its countries into what they are to this day. These conflicts changed how we fought wars, developed weapons, and used resources. The only question now is, was it for the better or was it for the worse?